Well, good day and welcome to you. It is Tuesday, December the 7th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing, and I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs. I know there are people who have heard this information before, but there are always people coming to this information for the first time. And I do want to just say this. For those who are totally new, if you want to know more, if you're interested in this, definitely check out the links that I provided in the description portion of every one of these videos, because I think you can educate yourself better that way. And then you can see if there's any truth to it for yourself or not. But with all the links that I provided, if you didn't know where to go first, I would definitely recommend checking out the Share International website first, because I think you can get more information in one spot there than you can anywhere else. So hopefully you'll take advantage of it. Now, I do have an email to cover. It comes from Dave. And I always want to say, if you have something you want to talk about with me or have a question to ask, you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. Most people post their questions in the comment section of the videos, and then I try to answer it in the next video. So I don't mind questions. In fact, I actually kind of like questions because it gives us something to talk about and something to look at and something to think about. So, all right. Now, Dave, you wrote out a lot, and I really appreciate the email. Thank you so much. I am not going to talk about everything because I don't know if it's okay for me to bring it up to other people or not. So I'm going to leave out the paragraph where you talked about your awakening period and even your Maitreya experience that you talked about. I want to you didn't give me permission to talk about that. So I'll try to figure out what is okay to talk about, because you did ask me for my thoughts on this stuff. All right. So what did Dave have to say? Here we go. Have been conflicted on this subject for nearly 30 years. Have reached many conclusions, as is possible, and formed many questions, and it remains as enigmatic as ever. Conclusions. I found Benjamin Creme to be sane, deeply impressive, and sincere man. He sacrificed so much time and money to commit to this vocation. For sure, this man believed what he said and had an uncommon spiritual and intellectual compass, and knowing quite something. Couldn't have said it better myself, Dave. Now, I would also like to add that yes, he was definitely sane. He was deeply impressive, and he believed 100% in this information for sure. And he was also quite funny. Most people didn't see that side of him, but the times that he was kind of, sometimes even during his lectures, but, the times that he was away from the public eye, he was quite humorous, actually, and I found him to be very funny. The thing I want to say about this, I knew Benjamin Creme for, almost 20 years before his passing in 2016. I met him in 97, and he passed in 2016. So I knew him for quite some time. The thing I found the most remarkable with him was, yes, he believed 100% in what he was saying. He had an inner conviction that you don't see every day in someone. But he knew how important this information was. He knew how important it was to get this information out. He knew that there was this urgency that humanity needed to change their way, or it's going to be bad for all of us. We need to solve the environmental problem. We need to bring about peace. We need to end hunger. He knew how important it is. And he was very passionate about getting this information out there. But at the same time, he presented this information in a very light and detached way. It's quite remarkable. I've never seen it in another individual like that. And that was one of the things that I thought that in the beginning, that how I think really drew me to the information was he didn't say things like, believe me, or trust me, or you need to know this, or you need to believe this. He never said anything like that. I've never heard him or read in any of his books where he said that. But yet he was deeply convicted, he had a deep conviction about this information. And a deep understanding about it, but also he had an understanding how important it was, and yet he allowed everyone the freedom and didn't push anybody or try to convince anybody. It's quite extraordinary. You don't see that in very many people, if any. You know what I'm saying? So the other thing I found remarkable with him was how he worked so hard his whole life. And you called it his vocation. Yes, it was his vocation. Yes, he did see it as his top priority to get this information out there. He, in his life, but he didn't get paid a dime for what he did. I know you knew that, Dave, but other people didn't know that. And all the proceeds from his books and his sales of his magazine and so forth and his lectures went right back into the work. He didn't get a dime of any of that information, or for giving out that information. So he saw it as not his own information, but for the world, really. Quite extraordinary. And he was very generous in terms of his time, and people's asking him a bunch of questions that he got all the time. You always get the same questions from people over and over again, and he was always very patient with them. He was a very loving person too. I knew him personally, and I knew how loving he was. Sometimes his love was a tough love, and I was the recipient of his tough love on several occasions. But he was a tough cookie too, because he got it from all sides, from the extreme right and let's say the Christians out there. They obviously didn't like what he said and had no problem trying to beat him over the head with it. But he also got it from other people that were perhaps more progressive and left-wing thinking people, and the media and the mainstream media and the independent media, and people around him sometimes were doing the same thing. And he got up every day, worked tirelessly to get this information out, and none of that stopped him. And you can read history books or see movies about people throughout history that had that type of conviction, that overcame all these obstacles and this confederacy against them in the way that they did, and for me to know him personally and care about him and love him the way that I did, to see him go through what he did, but yet do it with joy and detachment, it was quite inspiring. So, but yes, he was quite a unique person. All right. Let's see. You said, I would like to share with you several thoughts and questions that stand out over 30 years, and maybe you could offer a different perspective than I have considered. And I'll try, Dave. I don't know if I can or not. And even if I do offer a different perspective, I hope you understand that I'm not saying that my perspective is right and yours is wrong or incorrect, and I'm hoping that we don't draw any conclusions on what I said. It's just giving us something to think about. All right. In the early years, anyone in Ben's close group could have arranged to meet Maitreya, but they would forego the benefit gained by trusting the intuition and faith. Always felt that was a small price to pay for the cast iron, knowing you have been in the presence of such a living, breathing, enlightened being. Personally, if one person took that opportunity, imagine the impact that surety would have had on the whole group. I guess my question back to you, Dave, would it have that effect? Maybe, I guess. I can only go by my personal experiences, but I don't think it would have had any impact on anybody, really, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you why. I talked about it in a couple videos ago when I asked Maitreya if he could. I didn't say to do this. I didn't demand it from him. I asked him, would it be okay if you asked the Space Brothers to appear for my family? And I was headed to my brother's house on the 4th of July when I made this request of Maitreya, and he did. And everyone, that was there for the fireworks shooting in my brother's house saw it. I wasn't even the first one to see it. It was my brother's neighbor who saw it. And they all got excited. Even my little nephew at the time, who's now 18, but at the time he was quite little, looked at my brother and goes, Daddy, look, it's a UFO. And my brother, who prides himself on his intellect, but I think is pretty close-minded as a general rule, looked up and goes, that's not a UFO. I mean, he saw it. And it looked like a candle flame in the sky. It was bright red, and it was not small. It was big, and it was quiet. There wasn't any engine sounds. There were no wings. There was no tail fin, and it was going slowly over my brother's house, over the backyard, and over the golf course behind my brother's house. And he looked at my nephew, and he goes, that's just a plane with its tail light out. And there was nothing. It was not a plane. He saw just what everybody else saw that thought was a UFO. And my little nephew looked at my brother and went, yeah, you're right, Daddy. There's no such thing as UFOs, and went off and did his thing. And I've talked about it since then with my mother, who was there. But everybody else, my brothers never brought it up. My sister-in-law, even my nephew, never brought it up at all in questions. And I never bring it up to them that, I had asked Maitreya not long before that happened for them to make a space brother appear. Make a UFO, if it was okay if their UFOs were to, appear for my family. And so I felt kind of bad because the brothers and sisters from Mars, who were the ones that were occupying the ship, did they waste their time? I don't know, but it didn't have an effect on my brother. Maybe it will in the future, but now it didn't have any effect on him. So no, I don't think it would have. Now, the other thing too about that is I've never heard Ben mention that. I did read in one of his books, I don't know if it was Maitreya's Mission Volume 1 or 2. I can't remember where I read it, but I remember reading pretty much the same thing that you just said, that if you, I guess, asked Ben hard enough or long enough, that he would eventually tell you where Maitreya was speaking in London, and if you wanted to, you could go and hear him speak, and you would know for sure that Maitreya is a real person, and yes, you would forego any kind of karmic benefit from using your intuition and faith in terms of this information. Now, the way that I've seen him is, along with other people, thousands of other people, is as a familiar. It's not how he necessarily looks in London, and I have to use my intuition just like the other people did when they saw Maitreya, to recognize him as Maitreya. So it's not quite the same thing as what Benjamin Creme was talking about in terms of seeing Maitreya or meeting Maitreya. But one thing that was interesting, there was a guy, Benjamin Creme told this really funny story. There was a guy that came up to him after one of his lectures, and I can't remember exactly when this happened, but I remember Benjamin Creme telling this story a long time ago, so it was quite a bit of time ago that this happened. But he apparently had seen Maitreya in giving one of his talks in London. And one of the things that he said about Maitreya was, you can sit there and hear Maitreya speak and not try to understand what he's saying. You just understand it. And you can hear him speak, and you don't have to try to remember what he was saying. You just remember it. And he said it's like you don't even have to listen to him. You can feel it in your heart. You already know it's true based on your heart's response to what he's saying. He said you felt it in the heart. But he said Maitreya didn't speak a lot, and the words he spoke were very simple. And then he looked at Ben and he goes, "But you, sir, talk way too much." And that always made Ben laugh when he told that story. But, it kind of shows how he talks. And I wanted to kind of segue into reading an excerpt that I read from one of Benjamin Creme's master's article. It's entitled Man's Divinity. I read it not too long ago. If you want to, it's the video that I put up was entitled Man's Divinity. But the last paragraph of it, I think, really talks about what this guy was saying in terms of how Maitreya speaks to people. And the times that I saw him, even as a familiar, it was the same thing. I didn't have to try to remember what he said. I just remembered it. I didn't have to try to understand what he was saying. It was so simple that it was easy to understand. And it was I had this heartfelt response to what he was saying. I didn't have to try to have a heartfelt response. It was just a natural awakening of my own heart's recognition of who he was, But anyway, he says, even so, how can Maitreya touch the hearts of the millions needed to change direction? The answer lies in the potency of his energies. Never before has a teacher of such power stood before the world. With each word uttered, his beneficent force flows from heart to heart. Useless and unnecessary is argument and debate. His truth calls forth the truth in the heart of the listener, and in the crucible of their shared divinity is recognized as truth itself. Quite extraordinary. And the one thing that I want to say before I go on to your next part of your email, you probably knew this, Dave, but a lot of people don't. There was this controversy that happened not long after Benjamin Creme made the announcement that Maitreya gave his first interview. And Benjamin Creme made the announcement in January of 2010. But if you listen to the announcement, he never said when Maitreya gave his first television interview. But people went nuts trying to find anybody that fit the bill of looking like Maitreya, talking about social justice, and they found this guy named Raj Patel. And even to this day, people think that that was Maitreya's first interview. He was giving an interview on PBS talking about social justice. If you listen to the interview, it's still up online. Of course, people think he's the Antichrist. Rajpatal didn't even believe in Maitreya when confronted with this whole thing. Didn't know anything about it, right? Was totally taken back and shocked by all the media attention he was getting, because he was even hitting some of the mainstream news media were talking about it. It was quite crazy. And then Benjamin Creme had to come out and make the announcement that no, Rajpatal is not Maitreya, and people even to this day who follow Benjamin Creme don't even believe him, right? They think that it's still Rajpatal. But if you listen to him speak, is it easy to understand him? Is it easy to remember what he said? You know, Rajpatal is a very smart man, and he's an intellectual. And when he speaks, he's used to speaking to other people who are intellectuals. And when people are intellectual and they're speaking to other intellectuals, they have a tendency to talk really fast. And he talks very fast in this interview. And I had to keep rewinding it to understand what he was saying, to go back and try to remember what he was saying. And I cannot think of one thing that he said when I know the idea of what he was talking about, because it's one of Maitreya's biggest priorities, social justice, but that's about it. Everything else that he talked about, the words and the way that he spoke, I can't remember any of it. But yet people are convinced that it's Maitreya. Maitreya doesn't speak like Rajpatal. He speaks totally different than him. And this gentleman who came up to Benjamin Creme at the end of his lecture confirms it. And so does Benjamin Creme's master. It confirms it. And the times that I saw Maitreya, you know, he did not speak fast like that. He spoke very simply, but yet it like punched me in the heart every single time. I had a hard time sleeping afterwards because I was so excited and expectant of the future and so hopeful for the future. And a lot of times he just said something very simple to me, you know. So that's the impact that he has on people. But Benjamin Creme's master just explained why. The reason why he has that impact when he speaks is because the truth is within your heart too. He's speaking to that truth. He's not speaking something foreign to what you already don't see as true within yourself. You might have forgotten about it, not you personally, but you know, people might have forgotten about it. But that truth is latent within your heart too. He's speaking it. We're one. There's nothing but oneness. You know, now we need to live like this. And people don't think like that. But in their hearts, that's what they know to be true. You know, so that's the way it is. All right, now getting on to the next portion of it. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, I did, after several years of attending transmission meditation and lectures at Conway Hall, decided to test some claims solely for my own discernment. I carefully worded an email to Swami Nirliptalanda suggesting how wonderful it was that he was deeply acquainted with this modern yet ancient teaching that Share International was also promulgating. He was quite clear in his response, quote, "I do not subscribe to this interpretation as put forward by Share International," unquote. All right, so now if you heard some videos before in the past, you probably don't know this, but because I haven't been asked this in a while, but people from time to time ask me my interpretation of spiritual teachers or people who claim to channel Maitreya or these masters, and I always kind of give them the same answer. It's not my responsibility or duty to give you my opinion on it. Okay, it's for each and every one of us to kind of come up with our own opinion on it. Now, in this case, I'm going to say it's a little different, but I don't know much about Swami Nirliptalanda. You know, I would have had to done some study on it. Same thing with this Carolyn Hamlet, the woman that you wanted me to talk about. If I had any thoughts about it, I don't know anything about her either. I kind of read a little bit about her. I kind of read a little bit about Swami Nirliptalanda. Now, in terms of Swami Nirliptalanda's response, okay, what I was thinking to say is I can offer you 3 educated questions to think about, okay, not guesses, but just questions. 1, he's a very enlightened man that people think that he is, as a spiritual teacher, or as a swami or a guru, and doesn't know anything about Share International. And when asked, he probably might have read a little bit about it and said, I don't subscribe to that. Maybe. That's one question that I would say. Was that the case? The other one could be, he is just as enlightened as you think that he is and other people think that he is, and knows everything about Share International, what they're putting out about Maitreya and all this kind of stuff. And knew that if he told you, you would skip the step of using your own intuition and faith and believe it just because he said it. And he didn't want to infringe on your free will, and that's why he phrased it in the way that he did. If that's what he said to you, He never said that Maitreya doesn't exist or Maitreya isn't who Benjamin Creme said. He just said, I don't subscribe to that interpretation, whatever that means. Okay, that could mean anything, you know? So maybe that was the case. And then the other thing, it's just a question. I'm not saying it is, and I'm not even hinting that I think that about Swami Nirlananda. I truly don't know. But, you know, Krishnamurti even talked about some of the swamis and the Indian teachers, and that they're really not that spiritual. They're just greedy and want a bunch of, you know, they're like a television evangelist, right? They don't really have anything to offer, but yet they kind of put out there that they're spiritual. People believe them and give them their money, you know. And he kind of talked about it. And Krishnamurti, as well as Maitreya, both said, don't follow anybody. Just you follow what's within you. And that's kind of the underlying theme of what the thoughts that you wanted me to present to you based on what you were saying about people having a surefire knowledge of who Maitreya was if they would have just gone and seen him in London, to asking Swami Nirlananda, even with your uncertainty about your Maitreya experience. You know what I mean? It's all an undercurrent or underlying theme of it is the need for faith and the need to not follow anyone, really. And so that would be what I would say to really look at within yourself, you know. And faith, according to the masters, is not a faith based on belief like the popular view of it is. Because if you look at somebody who says they have faith in a belief, and then you approach them with something different, they get very upset about it usually, or they get, you know, very triggered or emotional about in terms of the response to you. Even if it's just looking at life in somewhat different of a way, you know, is that real faith? I would say no. The real faith is somebody like Ben having true conviction in what he's believes and what he knows and what he's saying, having true conviction in it, but yet allowing you to have the freedom to believe him or not, and not being upset if you don't believe him. That to me takes true faith. That would be the distinction or the difference between somebody like Ben and somebody that says they have faith and gets very upset when you have a different view on it. Does that make sense? But in each case, Maitreya himself says, don't run after anybody. Don't follow him. Because once you do, you've already lost yourself. Does that make sense? And it seems like in the cases in which you want me to respond, and even asking me my opinion of it's kind of the same thing, is, you know, don't follow what I'm saying. I'm just giving you this to think about, right? But it's all about faith and intuition. And hopefully this resonates with you, you know, but the experiences that I've had with Maitreya lead me to believe or have an understanding, or it gives me a sense of credibility about what Ben said. But I have to have faith in what I know based on not only my own personal experiences, but also what I know to be true about who Maitreya is. And that's what gives me the courage to stand up and speak to, even on a YouTube channel, about it. You know, if I didn't have faith in what I was saying, I wouldn't be doing this, right? But yet allow you to think what you want to think, you know what I mean, or whoever, right? So that I think is the ultimate distinction in it, right? But it's all boils down to faith and intuition. And there was a time that I saw Maitreya, and he came to me and he said, peace always starts from within. And that one teaching changed my life more than anything that I've ever heard Maitreya say. And because it starts from within. But you can take the word peace and substitute faith. Faith always starts from within. It always starts from within. Don't look without, look within. And then you'll have the surefire knowledge of what you know. You already know this to be true. It's just you're looking for other people to confirm it. You know, does that make sense? And for each one of us are guilty of this, but each one of us need to look within. That's what Maitreya was telling me. Peace always starts from within. There's peace in faith, in knowing who you are as a soul. That's peace. That's true peace. But don't look without. I was looking without. That's when he told me to do this, you know, and I still look without from time to time. And then I have to remind myself what Maitreya says. Peace always starts from within. It always starts from within. And to kind of tie it off, okay, so first of all, Dave, thank you so much for the email. It gave us a lot to think about and talk about. The reason why the intuition is so important, the reason why Maitreya, even when asked, now that he's not using his name, are you Maitreya? He's not going to answer it just the same way that Swami Nirliptalanda is not going to answer you in that way that you want. The reason why I can't tell you, or Ben couldn't tell you when he was alive, what channel Maitreya was speaking on so you could see it, is because we need to use our intuition. And people who don't understand what the intuition is don't understand why it's important for them to learn, to start using their intuition. But if this could, and when you follow somebody else, when you look to the outside, you stop using your intuition. It's kind of like a lazy way of trying to achieve the same result when you're not going to get the same result. You have to rely on your intuition, which once you start doing that, you start to generate this faith in yourself that what you know is what you know, right? Now, why is it important? Okay, and this is something that when I was looking at some things to kind of from the master to kind of talk about with you in reference to your email, I saw this last paragraph of the article, Reason and Intuition. Okay, so in the last paragraph of this, and I'm going to leave the video with this for everybody to think about. He said, the task ahead is clear. Open the windows of the soul and let the soul's light illumine your lives. Through the awakened intuition, allow the soul's knowledge and purpose to be expressed. Know the meaning of compassion and spread that love abroad. Allow your soul's wisdom to banish all illusion and become a light for your brothers. That is the task of all who would tread the path of light. Awaken the intuition and see clearly the plan. Awaken the intuition and dissolve the darkness. Awaken the intuition and cast out all fear. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.